Now, a little bit, what I'd like to do, if you're comfortable with this, is I'd like to share with you what is called in the esoteric philosophy, it's very interesting. The Tibetan has given us a variety of hints. And there's a study of the hints, they're called the hints and points of revelation. In one of the texts, it's called Discipleship in the New Age. There's volume 1 and volume 2, but there's a whole interesting body of study, and in that he gives hints about the journey. And one of these hints is very important when it comes to understanding service to the plans. And it's very short, and let's talk about it. I'm going to put it up here for us to read. It's very short. It says, disciples in all ashrams have a task of modifying, qualifying, and adapting the divine plan simultaneously. Modifying, qualifying, adapting. Keywords. So, let's do a little brainstorming here. What do you think? What comes to your mind when you read that? And what does it feel like it's trying to say to you?
It has to be susceptible to what's happening and adapting to what the situation is in the world.
Okay, so he's saying it suggests that we have to adapt something to what's happening in the world, okay, and adjusting it. Okay, that's makes a lot of sense. Yeah, what do you think?
We need to remain open and awake
Okay.
to all the possibilities.
Remain open to all possibilities. Okay, so again, a fluidity. Okay, great. Yeah.
Something about using inner authority.
Aha, using inner authority. Okay. Okay, that's an interesting point to make. Somehow it grabs us to recognize that there's an inner authority behind it. Okay. Did you have something?
Yeah, the adapting would just bring back to the point that you kept kind of reiterating how we need to adapt, like to bridge the systems, to adapt to what's already here and see the light within it, and how can we modify from there rather than...
Yes, okay, okay. Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead again.
Let go.
To let go.
Let go of all thought patterns, all belief patterns, modify.
Okay, okay. It's interesting because these hints are just that they're when you study them, he encourages this very kind of thing. How does it touch you? In what way does it speak to you? Because there is a hint in it. And then he goes into an analysis for us too. So how it touches you is very important. The way the analysis goes of this is it goes back to that whole thing we talked about earlier, about the idea of being receptive to the intuitions coming from the ashram, and the idea of then building thought forms around them, and then bringing them into the emotional and the physical expression and service to the outer whole. That whole idea of the magical process. And much of this has to do with that, as he explains it. Basically, the word modifying here, he suggests that what he intends by that is that it means that the intuition that's coming into your mind and you're beginning to develop thoughts around it, that you want to modify that impression so that it becomes the thought form that actually has application and usefulness in where you're going to deliver it. So there's a modification right at the process of building an idea. That's step one. Then what happens is, as we bring that idea into the emotional dimension of the personality, because that's the step two of it, what's the function of emotion? In the magical process, it plays a huge role. Emotion is that quality that gives vitality to a thought form. you're much more likely to manifest something if you have emotional vitality imbued in it, as opposed to if it's not at all. But it also makes it magnetic. You know, when a thought form has emotion, well-designed emotion, well-measured emotion permeating it, it creates magnetic appeal. And magnetic appeal is what's going to be needed to make it more successful as you bring something out into the world. You use your emotions. But here he's using the word qualifying. And that's an important term here, qualifying. He's basically saying to add a quality to the thought form. That quality could be love. That quality could be joy. That quality could be an attracting energy. That quality could be, you could conceivably at times add the emotion of anger if it were necessary to get something forward. That quality could be the emotion that we would call conviction. In other words, you modify it and then you qualify it. You see, we're bringing it down and trying to understand what is the emotion now I give to it that's going to be needed. And then the last, adapting. You may guess what that's about. It's kind of what you were at. Hitting the ground. Now I've got to bring it out into the outer expression. And the immediacy of my situation may require that I adapt it to make it fit correctly at this moment, in this place, at this time. So what does this do though? What's so important about this concept is that it takes us away from the sixth ray era that was governed by pure ideals that had a measure of inflexibility in the past. Here's my idea. This is the truth. This is what we must do. Nothing less than that has been a kind of attitude of service for a long time. It's you're right or wrong. This is plus or minus. There's good and evil. There's that whole idea of absolutism. It's very much a part of the past way of moving something forward because we had an ideal, and sometimes the downside of idealism is rigid idealism and a tendency to kind of not permit an incremental modifying tendency. This is a way of starting to break that down because we have to modify, we have to adjust, we have to bring it in incrementally. Is that all making sense to you folks? Yeah.
Does that get diluted in any way through personality?
What, this process?
Yeah.
So the question is, does that get diluted in any way? Yes, I think so. Because unless you were an initiate, but it will have some measure of dilution. When you say dilution, do you mean distortion or
Distortion.
distortion?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought you meant. So I think it does there's a distortion that comes into it, not because of the modifications, not because of the qualifying or the adapting, as much as it's the vehicle that is being used is tainted with impurities. So the answer, I think, is yes. And then when you study the magical process, you never forget that. And you never forget that there's a kind of danger of diminishment because of the impurities of our lower system. Of course, the further you are on the path, the fewer are those impurities. And so the less likelihood that you have any kind of real distortions. But nonetheless, you're absolutely right.
The reason I asked the question was because of the word simultaneous,
Oh yeah.
which would indicate all happening at the one time
Yeah.
process.
Right. Now that's interesting because I just talked about it sequentially, this, then this, then this, to break it out so we could see it. But in fact, it's an instant experience. It's an instant process involving all three things. And it's all about a synthetic approach. Yeah. You know, I've got another quote that can actually help us see this more. Let's take a look right here. Okay, so modification of the plan. Disciples, as they grasp the plan, are spiritually informed as to the steps to be taken to modify the plan upon the mental plane, so that its acceptance by humanity is intelligently progressive and is not dynamically imposed with consequent disastrous effects, are the primary agents. They accept the responsibility for the needed compromise, for it is their responsibility and not the responsibility of the masters. The various aspects of the plan, as presented to them in the ashram, are then modified and rearranged so that the plan becomes a series of sequential steps and is not the violent impact of an unrealized idea. It might be said that the spiritual compromise of the disciple, working with the plan, transforms the basic idea through mental modification into an acceptable ideal. Okay? And then, when the process of modification is completed, the idea, in the form of an ideal, descends to the astral plane, the plane of the emotions. There it becomes tinctured with the quality which the working disciple believes will make the best appeal to the masses of men with whom he may be working, apparently, and particularly to the aspiring intelligentsia. Now, this quote doesn't take me to the last step, which is the adapting phase, but you get the idea here. This is very much, this is the quality, the qualifying, to give quality to it. You know, I think of politicians, for instance. I don't know about in your country, but in my country, when you see political campaigns going on, a politician, if you watch a politician, they've got this political platform, these ideas that are often manifesting as ideals, but they're they're ideas. And they'll take, if they're talking to the masses, they'll express those ideas in very in a language that is comparatively mundane and appealing, that is aligned with the masses. But they'll take the same idea and express it to the intelligentsia in a whole different way according to that place in their way of using the mind. So it's an adjustment to who are you delivering it to. I'm sure you see that in your own life, don't you? I'm sure, well, what about parents? Parents must do it all the time with kids, you know. You've got kids that are really young, you have to say it one way. The same thing has to be said differently to a teenager. I'm presuming, I'm not a parent, but I'm presuming that's the way it goes. Yeah, all right. All right, so. All right, so should we, I'll tell you what, let's one more thing we want to do, and then I think I can just see it in your faces, and a break is going to be needed soon. One more thing I want to cover, though, and then we'll take a break. And then later, after that, we're going to get into the techniques that would help us all become better, okay, at this. But these are things that the Tibetan himself said are really important for all of us to be better in a more general way. He says, number one, to really be a new group of World Server member, you have to have some soul infusion. Everybody know what soul infusion is here? Everybody know what that is? Some of the causal body has to be actually winning the day over the personality. It varies greatly how much, but nonetheless you have to have some soul infusion, okay? Then he says this, which is very interesting. He says the brain consciousness has to be able to be sensitive in two directions. In two directions. Anybody thought, what do you think that two directions might be? Okay, that's good. Vertical and horizontal, meaning right. So I'm sensitive to the outer world of stimulation and what it brings to my awareness, but I'm also sensitive to the intuitional downflow, and that the mind, the brain, is able to register both of those types. I live the vertical life, I express horizontally, right? I interact horizontally. Sometimes it's called the ear. The sensitivity of the ear in two directions. Hearing the needs of the world and hearing the promptings from the ashram. So sometimes it can be talked about as a hearing. Okay? Third, ability to think abstractly and synthetically. Well, we talked about that already. Okay? Fourth, and this one is really interesting to me, it involves a heart chakra that's really expressive and opening, but it's a heart chakra that needs to be linked deeply with at least 8 other people. How's that for interesting? Different. 8 other people. Apparently, and this, when I first studied this, I thought, wow, really? Is that? Essentially, it's this idea that when 8 hearts are deeply bound together with a sense of commonality of love and purpose, when 8 hearts, 9, 1 plus 8, 9, that's what's required for that whole energy of love to be absorbed into the hierarchy, into the heart center of the planetary logos, which is to say, to be absorbed into the hierarchy, into the ashram. In other words, it takes 9 united hearts for that love energy to make its way into the ashram. Minimum 9. Now you're going, I can see it in your face. 1, 2, 3. You can see what you're doing.
You need groups. That's it.
That group, groups, triangles, yeah. I'm sure if you really think about it, you've already got that.
Is that mentioned in one of the books?
Yeah. Yes, it is. It is mentioned in one of the books. Another thing, that the head center must be at least in process of awakening. So what is the head center about when you think of the crown center?
Soul contact, aspiring,
Okay,
bringing down.
yep, it's got that. How is this, because this is also about the soul contact too. What's the difference between soul contact here and soul contact here?
That goes to outer decision. No?
Well, this can go both ways.
Your mind.
What ray is most related to this chakra? The 7th is, there. You're right, there's a lot to the, says about the 7th. Even more important, it's the opposite one. First, the first ray. This is the ray of will and purpose. This is the chakra that makes registration of the purpose of the soul. This is the chakra that registers the love and wisdom of the soul. The throat chakra is the chakra that registers the creative ideations of the soul. So this is creative activity. This is love and wisdom. This is purpose and will. Not only does this align the disciple with the will of the soul or the purpose of the soul, but on a deeper level, it aligns them with the purpose of the ashram. The purpose of the ashram. And on a still deeper level, Shambhala, the purpose center, the crown chakra of the entire planetary logos. So all of these chakras, our chakras are really important in this philosophy to understand because they link you to other things. They always link you to the same chakras. So for instance, the heart chakra will always link you to the planetary heart chakra, which is the hierarchy. The crown chakra is always an energetic link to the planetary crown chakra, Shambhala. The throat chakra is always going to be linking you to the planetary throat chakra. Humanity is the planetary throat chakra. But aside from that, there are other nuances. So for instance, just as an example, the heart chakra links you naturally with the ashram, but the crown chakra also can link you to the master of the ashram. So the master of the ashram is a place in the ashram of will and purpose. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that there is, the way you learn esotericism is to make analogies and bridging analogies. So you can take any of your chakras and you can see, if you see how they link, it starts to come together. For instance, let's just do this as an example. The Sun, Mercury, and Venus. The Sun, Mercury, and Venus. Those three, when I look at all three of them, have an energetic relationship to the three chakras we were just talking about. If I use those three, what would be the energetic relationship? Venus would be the heart, Mercury would be the throat, and the Sun would be the crown. Okay? Right. Gold star. Okay. So let's do another one. Actually, I know this is actually really, if you get in the habit of this, then this stuff really comes together. I mean, I learned it took me about a year to figure it out when I started studying this, but once I figured out it just all started to come together. So you want to try another one? Yeah. Let's do another one, okay? I don't know the name of it in this country. What is your legal system called? Just is there a name for it? Disaster. Disaster. Well, I'll use the Justice Department, okay? Justice Department, Parliament, Prime Minister. Correlate those to the three chakras. Justice Department, Prime Minister, and the Parliament. They correlate to those three chakras. Prime Minister would be the crown. This is going to be the legal thing. This is legal. This is third aspect. Law is third aspect. Karma is ruled by karmic law. Law is always third aspect, 3. And your parliament isn't, your parliament's, its role, in theory anyway, is to be the agency that is thinking about the unitive welfare of the society. Heart.
I saw it differently. I saw Parliament as the lawmakers. So I saw Parliament as the next step down from the government, from the Prime Minister.
Ah.
So I saw it as Prime Minister, Parliament, and then the legal system, because the legal system is based on two things. It's based on statute law and common law.
Ah, okay. Well, I guess
That's the heart, which would be the implementation of it.
Okay, that's interesting. Not being part of your system.
Anything else? That analogy?
In the United States, it would be the presidency, crown, the Senate and the Congress. The Congress would be heart, and the Supreme Court would be throat. That's the trinity in the United States. But maybe these are not exactly equivalent in your country. I don't know. Yeah.
I think because we've got common law, which is based on experience,
Hmm.
from case law.
Well, always law, well, not always, but most of the time law is about establishing form and pattern that is needs to be grounded and applied. And yeah, lawmakers are trying to make laws, but they're making laws that, in theory, are for the benefit of the larger whole and to create more effective unity. And the Prime Minister would be the crown, although I suppose that is not quite the same as the presidency in the United States. But anyway, so I guess what I'm saying is you can play with it in your politics.
Of course, I just realised I'm from Wales and you're from Ireland. So we have a different system.
Oh, well, that might be true too. Yeah, I don't know how that works. Yeah. Yeah?
In actuality, it's the Vatican is the ruler
Of the what?
of the legal system. The Vatican is the ruler of the legal system.
No, it was.
Of your legal system?
Used to
See, yeah, this,
There was a referendum removed that.
be. Is still, you're right.
It is.
that's interesting. Well, yeah. I'm going to have to learn more about it before I can figure out which is which there. The Vatican. Boy, that's such a foreign concept in the United States. The idea that would never be said in the United States. Huh?
That goes back a long way.
I'll bet. Okay. Yeah.
It all comes under decrees
Uh-huh.
that were made going back, and the present legal system that we operate under, still operate under those decrees.
Here's one for you. I have to ask you about your cities, though. Okay. Can you identify which city is first aspect, which city is second aspect, which city is third aspect? In general, of course. A good example, I'll give you another country as an example, so that may be helpful. Let's go with New Zealand. Okay? New Zealand, in terms of nations, in terms of cities, its crown chakra, first aspect, would be Wellington. That's the capital. Its second aspect is Christchurch. That's where there's even the name, Christchurch, but it's also where more culture and the arts is trying to find its place. Third aspect, which would be the business economics, Auckland. The same is true in Australia. First aspect is the capital is called, Canberra. Second aspect would be Melbourne. Third aspect would be Sydney. Okay? Those are chakra centers. Okay? So I'm just trying to show you, this is a concept that goes way beyond just your own chakra. It's because cities are chakras too. Cities are chakras too. In the United States, crown chakra, Washington, D.C. Throat chakra is New York. Heart chakra, Los Angeles. Actually, the Tibetan, I didn't make that one, the Tibetan gives us, see? Because nations actually have chakras as well. A nation is an entity. It will have 7 chakras that correspond to its 7 energy systems, and it comes through cities. So it's something to think about. So how would that play out here in Ireland? Would be first aspect?
The art of Galway.
So Dublin is where the power is.
Yeah.
So that's first aspect. Where's the economic powerhouse?
Dublin.
They get them both, huh?
Yeah.
And where's the arts?
Galway.
Galway? Galway.
Cork is the heart.
Cork is the heart. Okay. Okay. What did he say? Oh, Cork is the root chakra. Okay. Look, anyway, it's as fun as it is, there's some usefulness to this, actually. And you find that this happens when you study this philosophy. You find that your mind is trying to go, where's first aspect, where's second aspect, where's third aspect. You know, it's happening right now. Right now, in general, this seminar, as most seminars, there's a 3-aspect tendency in the dynamics of this room. I am generally playing the role of the first aspect. You are generally playing the role of the third aspect, and the second aspect is the intercommunication between us. That second aspect. You see? Always second aspect is trying to relate. Always first aspect is bringing something forth. Always third aspect is receptive and carries into activity. You see? So, but like for instance, right now I'm speaking to you, so I'm being first aspect. But now, hey, by the way, John, can I ask you a question? When you had a reading yesterday, did that work out okay for you?
Yes.
It was okay?
Yes.
Okay. So when he responds back to me, then I play the third aspect position and he takes on first aspect. So there's a whole study in this about aspect reversibility or interchangeability. And so it's really interesting to really start seeing it. And I know that sounds a little strange, but I guarantee you you're going to get into it eventually.
On a planetary scale,
Yeah.
how does that manifest?
Tell me more what
On
you...
a planetary, like in terms of a city, for example, where's the
Oh,
chakra?
the big, we know planetary 5 of the 7 centers. Here are the 5 chakras. London. Darjeeling. New York. Tokyo. And Geneva. Geneva is the heart. That's where the Red Cross is from. That's where the principle of neutrality had its strong emphasis. London is the throat chakra. It's the economic powerhouse in many ways for the whole world. And the head is not, technically speaking, the head hasn't come into maturity yet. I believe it actually is Darjeeling, and yet it's not, it's still in recessiveness. I think it's Tokyo is the base, and New York is the solar plexus. New York is the solar plexus. New York is a good example of a city that has 2 roles. It's the throat chakra for America. It's the economic driving energy of America. And it's also very creative. But globally, it's solar plexus, the center of desire. But in America, it's much more this, you see? So New York, according to the Tibetan, New York plays both a role as a chakra within the country, but also as a world chakra. You see? Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question. Yeah, but I'm not sure, but I think Darjeeling is destined to become the crown. Kind of makes sense because it's right there in the Himalayas, kind of near. But it hasn't, right now it's dormant. It's not quite come to fruition. And then there are 2 other centers that we do not know what they are. They don't come into manifestation yet until the next root race where the next one will come. There's another great racial epoch way in advance, thousands of years from now. We know one will manifest in, I think, Australia, and I think the 7th one manifests, it's either Africa or South America, I'm not sure. One of those 2. Yeah. Okay, let's finish this then. The last point that I wanted to make here is that you have to have some form of form of creative expression in your life as a part of being the new group of world servers, part of that. You're doing something that, always there should be an element of pioneering in your creative work. Doesn't mean you have to do if it's not a pioneering new thing, it's doing something that's not new, but doing it in a new way. So it's one of those two things.